Okay, there's never really been an issue as reliable at bringing those lawmakers, Republicans and Democrats, together as veterans' concerns. And that seemed to be the case again this week as veterans and family members gathered at the Capitol to celebrate what they thought was going to be the final passage of the PACT Act. That's a bill that would help expand health care for millions of veterans who suffered toxic exposure from Agent Orange in Vietnam to burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan. But in an apparent change of heart, at the 11th hour, 25 Republican senators who had already supported basically the same bill the month before when it was on the Senate floor voted to block its passage. Veterans and Democrats were outraged and found an outspoken ally in the form of comedian and activist Jon Stewart, longtime proponent of the veterans and their issues. Here's a bit of his nearly 10-minute rant yesterday outside the Senate.
So ain't this?
Yeah.
Yep. Ain't this? I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know what to say. I've been coming down here 10, 15 years. I'm used to the hypocrisy. Christina Keene will tell you from VFW. She sat in an office with Mitch McConnell and a war veteran from Kentucky, and he looked that man in the eyes and he said, "We'll get it done." And he lied to him. Every one of these individuals that has been fighting for years, standing on the shoulders of Vietnam veterans who have been fighting for years, standing on the shoulders of Persian Gulf War veterans fighting for years, Desert Storm veterans, to just get the health care and benefits that they earned from their service. And I don't care if they were fighting for our freedom. I don't care if they were fighting for the flag. I don't care if they were fighting because they wanted to get out of a drug treatment center or it was jail or the army. I don't give a. They lived up to their oath. And yesterday, they spit on it in abject cruelty. Boy, they haven't met a war they won't sign up for, and they haven't met a veteran they won't screw over. Pat Toomey says, I've got veterans groups behind me. These are the veterans groups. This is an embarrassment to the Senate, to the country, to the founders, and all that they profess to hold dear. And if this is America...
Okay, that was a rant. And so the question now is, why the flip-flop? Was it a flip-flop on the part of these 25 Republicans? The fact is, this bill has been going on in Washington for this kind of thing has been going on in Washington for years. Joining us to discuss it now, writer and editor of The Federalist, Emily Jashinsky, and civil rights attorney Robert Patillo. Okay, so Emily, first to you. Are you aware of a rational reason for what appears to be an about-face on this veterans health care bill by those 25 Senate Republicans?
My understanding of their concern is that it's related to overwhelming concerns or the possibility that this will overwhelm VA facilities. And anyone who's talked to veterans knows that they already receive insufficient care. And I think both sides, Republicans and Democrats, understand that. So far be it from me to defend either Republicans or Democrats.
Yeah.
But in terms of whether there's a rational reason, I think it's plausible that concerns about overwhelming VA facilities, if those are coming from certain veterans groups who have looked at this and said, hold on, this might need some tweaks so that we don't overwhelm the facilities. That seems plausible to me. I'm not going to endorse that position, but it doesn't seem like, quote, abject cruelty, as Jon Stewart put it.
Yeah.
I think that's a visceral reaction and an understandable one.
Yeah. It's kind of a difficult look for Republicans because it does appear, without any evidence to the contrary, that they're acting out of a sense of pique. They were mad. And so they took their ball and they went home. And Robert, Republicans, they're angry because of this deal that was announced, this big surprise between Chuck Schumer and Joe Manchin, that big new $700 billion bill on energy and tax policy and climate policy. Okay, that's their right. They feel like they had the rug pulled out from under them. They were blindsided. I mean, pick your metaphor. But is it right to take their anger out on veterans' health care?
Absolutely. And all their excuses have been complete malarkey, to take a turn of phrase from our president. And I think the most telling reason is there's video from the Senate floor, Ted Cruz fist bumping other Republicans as they took health care away from veterans. I think that's the most disgusting part of this entire thing. And for the party that loves to run around with the Republican or the flag of our nation wrapped around us with bald eagles, calling themselves patriots, I find it particularly abhorrent what they've done. My sister's an Iraq War veteran. The idea that these people who have served our country, who have fought, and many of which have been injured for life, and to say, well, we don't have enough VA facilities is one of the excuses that they've used. We have an $813 billion United States military budget per year. That's more than the next 20 countries combined. And you mean to tell me we can't open more VA facilities and we have to vote on whether or not we'll keep you alive once you get here? I think our military community has to take a long look at what Republican priorities are. It's never been about supporting the troops. It's always been about supporting the military industrial complex.
Yeah, we've been following this burn pits issue in Iraq. All kinds of waste and refuse and trash was just burned in open pits. People around them, American military personnel around those pits, inhaling it and have suffered consequences now as a result of that. That's essentially what was in the bill, allowing them to blame that exposure to burn pits for their illnesses and get health care. Jon Stewart's been running around the Hill for years now on this issue with veterans groups. Emily, I want to ask you, though, you mentioned the rant. It was way over the top. Clearly, that was a man who was fed up, as I think a lot of Americans are on both sides of the aisle about the way Congress operates. But do you think that rant is actually going to help, standing out there and calling them MFers? I mean, half of that had to be bleeped out. You think that's going to help his cause?
I think with Jon Stewart, we have seen time and again that his advocacy, even, he does a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but his advocacy on behalf of the veterans group or on behalf of people who suffered on 9/11, who, helped with the situation as it was unfolding, the first responders, it has consistently moved the ball forward. I think that's the benefit of tapping professional actors and entertainers, is that they are able to get public attention on something. And Republicans then are forced to respond just because of segments like this one. They do not want to have this look when people are watching the news and learning about the development. So I do think he can move the ball forward with attention-grabbing, visceral reactions because they generate segments exactly like this one.
Yeah, it's interesting because we followed him around. Like I said, he's been on the Hill a lot. We followed him around, and a lot of times he defers. He doesn't want to be on camera. He doesn't want to be the person being interviewed. He defers to the veterans that are walking around with him. Robert, we now have Republican Susan Collins of Maine, of course, saying that the bill that would make same-sex marriage equality a codified law, some feel that it's under threat now after the Dobbs decision in Mississippi, and Clarence Thomas's a concurring opinion there. She's saying that it could be in trouble because of GOP anger over this Democratic spending bill, this Schumer-Manchin deal. What do you make of that?
She's absolutely correct. I think that what we've seen is what Mitch McConnell years ago said, the era of bipartisanism is over. And so because Democrats decided they wanted to help the environment and stop people from dying from climate change, they're going to take this out by removing constitutional rights. And remember, this 6-3 court is just getting started. Anything within the progeny of Roe that comes along the concept of the federal right to privacy, those will be under attack. We're going to see the Internet State Commerce Clause under attack next term of the Supreme Court. So who knows how far and how visceral Republicans will get. Remember, Mitch McConnell went all the way back to Harry Reid when it came to blocking Merrick Garland from even having a hearing. He has a long memory, and I think it's we're going to see gridlock in Washington if they return to power.
Okay. I spent 12 years in those halls as a reporter chasing people around. And, part of me, I'll be honest with you, can empathize with the frustration that Jon Stewart and others feel. I don't think I would ever have an opportunity to express it like he did. Back in 2008, September 29th, I'll tell you the date, the TARP bill crashed on the floor because a lot of Republicans were mad at Nancy Pelosi in a speech that she made advocating for the bill. The stock market crashed. I don't know if you remember that vote. What a day that was. But another example of people taking out their anger on the poison of politics spilling over into policy. So I just want to ask both of you, Capitol Hill, so toxic now. How does it get better? I mean, could an external threat, we talked at the top of the show about China. I mean, blue sky, tell me what the solution is. How do we get a functioning Congress? I'll start with you, Emily.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of reforms that happened, for instance, under Newt Gingrich in the 90s, that if we go back and look at them, we can question. I mean, they were really to tighten the purse strings and decentralize the power in this country. But what happened is that actually we have a lot of lawmakers who spend a whole lot less time together and whose staffs have been pared down to 20-somethings. And you know this, you were talking to many of those 20-somethings, I imagine, over the course of your time on the Hill.
Yeah, they're not 20-somethings anymore.
Yeah, right. But people would be surprised to learn exactly how much of the work is getting done by these smaller staffs with people that are frankly less experienced. So I think reforming actually the institution itself and the day-to-day function of it would be a great place to start.
Okay, Robert, how do we fix Congress? You have 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah, look, if that's outside my pay grade, but I think we have to get the money back out of politics. We've seen consistently since we have decided corporations are people too, our politics have gotten progressively more caustic. The years of getting 98-0 votes on Supreme Court justice nominees is completely gone because they are continuously in a campaign cycle 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The real action going forward is going to be on the state level. We have to start organizing on the state level to get things done.
Yep, the eternal campaign. Absolutely. I think you're both right. So, Emily and Robert, thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.